George Lucas had a huge piece that could have been a part of the Star Wars history called Star Wars Underworld. That could have basically drastically changed the future of the franchise itself. And unfortunately, it was destroyed. It was something that George Lucas was working on before he sold Lucasfilm to Disney, which was the Star Wars Underworld series, which unfortunately never saw the light of day. So we're going to go ahead and get right into this big story. So a recent report from Variety, well, as shown here, uncovered that George Lucas had over 60 scripts for a Star Wars TV series known as Star Wars Underworld. Now, these scripts from George Lucas were supposed to be, part of the show by George Lucas himself that would have aired on TV and cost a whopping $40 million per episode to produce. Now, if you can believe it, I mean, that was just, the cost of making one episode. Okay, so you might wonder, why did this never happen? Well, according to the report itself, these scripts were dark, violent, and edgy, which would have completely changed the way that we've seen Star Wars under George Lucas. Now, here's where, it all gets interesting. You see, these scripts were written by George Lucas himself, and the story was going to be set between the events and the time areas of Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. In other words, between the end of the prequels and beginning of the original trilogy. Now imagine that, a Star Wars story that dives deeper into the galaxy's underworld, exploring the darker side of the Star Wars universe. And it came from George Lucas. I mean, that sounds incredible, right? I definitely would have watched it. But why exactly didn't we get this show? I mean, why was it tossed aside? Well, apparently, it turned out that, when Disney bought Lucasfilm, they made the ultimate decision to go ahead and throw away these scripts, leaving fans with nothing but what could have been. There was so much potential here, and yet Disney chose to go ahead and move into a completely different direction. And now we've seen how that turned out. Now, when I first heard about this, I couldn't believe it. I mean, 60 scripts, $40 million an episode. I mean, this wasn't even a small project, so it seems. But George Lucas had poured a lot of effort and creativity into this, and yet all of it just got tossed out. Think about it. Think about it. George Lucas, a man who created one of the most successful franchises in film history, had this amazing vision for the future of Star Wars, and they threw it away. It's pretty tragic in a way if you think about it, but what we know, they were not your typical Star Wars fare. You see, they were much darker with elements of violence, intrigue, and even some sexy elements in there. This may have not been a show for kids. In fact, it was going to be a show for a more mature audience, one that was ready for something more complex and, frankly, more adult. Now, it was a way for George Lucas to go ahead and try to evolve the storytelling to fit the generation that had actually grown up with the prequels and the expanded universe itself. And a lot of people are angry with Disney right now, but this George Lucas story doesn't end there. You see, there was also a video game in the works that was tied to the series. Now, Star Wars, which is Star Wars 1313, which was supposed to dive deep into the underworld of Coruscant. Now, this game was being developed by LucasArts, and it had an incredible, promise and stuff. They had test footage, they had actors, they had costumes. This was a full-blown production that was ready to go. And yet, just like that, the Underworld series was never completed. And here's the crazy part, though. Even after Disney took over Lucasfilm, they still have all the material in their vault. They have the scripts, the test footage, the concept art, everything. They could have easily brought this vision to life, but they chose not to. Instead, they went a completely different direction with their own version of Star Wars, which, let's be honest, wasn't lived up to the legacy that George Lucas left behind. Matter of fact, they did it so that way they can go ahead and go after that DEI money. Now, I know what some of y'all might be thinking. Now, why would Disney just go ahead and toss all this away? I mean, why would they throw away a good chance to go ahead and create something truly special? I mean, that's the question I don't even have a clear answer to, but I got a few ideas, and it's possible that Disney, for all of its financial success, hasn't exactly embraced the creative spirit that made Star Wars what it is today. Now, the focus seems to be more on brand control and just making sure everything fits into, a neat little package. But unfortunately, that means that we've missed out on George Lucas's true final masterpiece right here. Now, what could have been? I mean, that's the real tragedy right there. That's the one thing that we all ask ourselves. Think about it. A Star Wars show from George Lucas with more mature storytelling, deeper themes, and a totally different tone. And it could have been just, a game changer, if you will. And yet, Disney chose to throw it away in favor of something that, let's be honest, doesn't even hold a candle to the original vision of George Lucas. Now, I'm be honest with y'all, I just can't help but wonder how things would be if they had chosen to go ahead and embrace the vision of George Lucas, instead of just discarding it. I mean, imagine if they had taken those 60 scripts and turned them into a series. Maybe it wouldn't have been perfect, but it would have been something new, something bold, something that, could have restored the magic of Star Wars and maybe even kept the fans around in the fandom, okay? But what makes this even more frustrating is the fact that George Lucas was still deeply involved in Lucasfilm when the cell went down. Now, he had a vision for the future of Star Wars, and yet it was never realized. It was almost as if the company he built didn't trust his judgment anymore. I mean, it seems to me maybe they were too focused on the financial side of the things, or maybe they didn't think the world was, ready for a darker, more mature Star Wars. But that doesn't make it any less disappointing. Okay. Now, I'll be honest with you. I'm not saying that, everything Disney has done with Star Wars has been terrible. We had two good seasons of The Mandalorian, but there have been some good moments. But let's be real, the franchise itself has never truly been the same since George Lucas stepped away. I mean, Disney's focus on flashy, big budget spectacles and its like attempt to go ahead to appeal to a broad audience has led to a lot of missteps. The heart of Star Wars, the soul of it was always about the characters, okay? The stories and the themes. And Disney has missed that mark time and time again. I mean, that's the unfortunate part, but let's not dwell on the negative too much. But this, I mean, I want to say there's still hope. The material for Underworld, Star Wars Underworld, is still out there. The scripts, the test footage, the concept art, it's all still sitting in Disney's vault, just waiting to be rediscovered. But maybe, just maybe, someone will come along and realize the potential that's sitting right under their noses. I mean, maybe they'll decide to go ahead and take these scripts, this material, and possibly or hopefully bring George Lucas's vision to life, even if it's years later than it should have been. Hey, if that happens, well, let me tell you, it could be the greatest thing to happen to Star Wars in a long, long time. I mean, the world is still hungry for something fresh, to be honest with you, something new, something bold. And what better way to give that to the fans and everything than by finally telling a story that George Lucas intended to tell all those years ago. Okay, but I mean, let's be honest, until that happens, I mean, we can only hope of what could have been. Now we can only imagine the world where George Lucas's Star Wars Underworld became a reality. And that, my friends, right there is a real shame. Okay. Now, let me ask you this. Do you think Disney should pick up these scripts and make something out of them? Or, I mean, is it time to move on and let the past go? Let me know what you think in the comments below. And, as always, I mean, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and don't forget to go ahead and subscribe for more, discussions like this one. And until next time, keep the conversation going and stuff, and keep having fun with the things that you love and enjoy. Until then, peace.